The crimson dust of Carnal swirled around Lieutenant Darian Reeves, each breath a battle against the planet's toxic atmosphere. His environmental suit, a patchwork of reinforced nanomaterials and emergency repairs, hissed with each labored movement. 7 standard days had passed since he entered the crucible of endurance, a trial that had broken countless warriors from 100 different star systems. Neuralin watched from the observation platform, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with a mix of curiosity and barely concealed skepticism. The humans were known for many things: adaptability, resilience, and almost maddening persistence. But survival was not their strongest trait, especially not here on Carnal. Darian's communication implant crackled to life, the AI's synthesized voice cutting through the howling winds. Structural integrity at 62%. Recommend immediate shelter reconstruction. He ignored the warning. Shelter was a luxury he couldn't afford, not with the third phase of the trial approaching. The Crucible was more than a test of survival, it was a fundamental challenge to existence itself. Each sector of the planet presented a unique nightmare: toxic atmospheres, gravitational anomalies, predatory ecosystems that defied comprehension. His mind drifted to their first encounter, 6 months earlier on the neutral trading station orbiting the Centauri Nexus. Neuralin had been a diplomatic envoy, her people, the Lamhari, known for their intricate bioluminescent communication and advanced neural networking. She had laughed when he first mentioned the Crucible, a melodic sound that was part dismissal, part challenge. Humans, she had said, her translucent fingers tracing patterns in the air. A linguistic dance of light and meaning, always rushing toward impossible challenges. He remembered the exact moment he decided to prove her wrong. Not out of anger, but out of a deeper understanding that some barriers were meant to be challenged. The landscape of Carnal shifted around him. Crystalline formations erupted from the ground, each shard capable of refracting energy in ways that could slice through molecular bonds. Darian's suit registered multiple thermal and radiation warnings, but he pressed forward. His hands, scarred from previous encounters, moved with practiced efficiency. A makeshift shield constructed from the remnants of his tactical gear, reinforced with emergency nanosealant. His eyes, one slightly cybernetic after a previous mission, scanned the horizon, calculating probabilities and potential threats. The Crucible was more than a physical challenge. It was a psychological warfare zone where the environment itself seemed sentient, adapting, testing, probing for weaknesses. Darian had seen warriors with centuries of combat experience reduced to trembling husks within hours. But he was different. Each challenge was a letter in a message he was writing to Neuralin. Each survived moment a statement: I am here, I am possible. As the first of the sector's energy storms began to build, a massive electromagnetic surge that could strip flesh from bone, Darian secured his position. The suit's quantum stabilizers hummed, creating a microshield against the incoming destruction. Neuralin would be watching, she had to be. The storm hit with the force of 1,000 suns collapsing, and Lieutenant Darian Reeves stood his ground. Reflections. In the observation chamber, Neuralin's bioluminescent patterns shifted from skeptical blue to an intrigued amber. The human was different, not just in his physical resilience, but in something harder to quantify. Hope, determination, a language beyond words. Her species had a saying: to survive is to communicate, and Darian Reeves was speaking volumes. The Centauri Nexus hung like a jewel against the infinite blackness of space, a neutral trading hub where 1,000 civilizations intersected. It was here, amid the controlled chaos of interstellar commerce, that Darian Reeves first encountered Neuralin. 6 months earlier, the diplomatic conference had been a delicate dance of potential alliances and unspoken tensions. Humans were still considered newcomers to the galactic community, their rapid technological advancement viewed with a mixture of fascination and suspicion. Darien stood at the periphery of the grand reception hall, his military dress uniform a stark contrast to the flowing, luminescent attire of the alien diplomats. He was out of place, a soldier among negotiators, a human among beings who had mapped the stars while his species was still fighting on a single planet. Neuralin moved through the crowd like living light. The Lumhari were renowned for their ability to communicate through bioluminescent patterns, a language more nuanced than any spoken word. Her skin shifted in complex patterns of blue and silver, telling stories without sound. Their first interaction was anything but romantic. The human military delegation, she had stated, or more accurately projected, her bioluminescent patterns flickering with a mix of academic curiosity and barely concealed condescension. Always so, linear in your thinking. Darien had responded with a dry smile. Linearity has its advantages, it's how we've survived. Their conversation might have ended there, a brief moment of cross-cultural tension had it not been for the unexpected attack. A rogue diplomatic drone, its systems hijacked by separatist elements, burst into the reception hall. Energy weapons charged, targeting the diplomatic corps. In that moment, everything changed. Darien moved with the precision of a trained soldier. His body became a shield, pushing Neuralin behind a protective barrier. The drone's first energy burst caught his shoulder, burning through his uniform, exposing cybernetic reinforcements that spoke of previous battles. The hall erupted into chaos. Diplomatic guards from a dozen species responded, but Darien was already neutralizing the threat. A calculated throw of a quantum disruptor, a precise energy pulse, the drone fell, sparking and destroyed. When the chaos subsided, Neuralin studied him with new eyes. Her bioluminescent patterns had shifted, no longer dismissive but intrigued. "You risked your life," she said, her translator rendering the bioluminescent patterns into words, "for diplomats who barely acknowledge your species' existence." Darien's response was simple: "It's what we do." In the weeks that followed, something unexpected happened. Conversations extended beyond formal diplomatic channels. Neuralin discovered a human who was more than the stereotypical aggressive soldier. Darien found an intellect that challenged everything he thought he knew about communication and connection. Their discussions ranged from interstellar politics to the nature of consciousness. Neuralin explained the Lumhari concept of living communication, how their entire species understood connection as a dynamic, ever-changing process. Darien shared stories of human resilience, of communities that survived against impossible odds. It was during one of these conversations that the Crucible first came up, a legendary trial of survival hosted on the most unforgiving planet in the known galaxy. No human had ever completed it. Neuralin's laughter had been a cascade of blue and silver light. "Impossible," she had said. And in that moment, Darien made a decision that would change everything. The challenge was more than a test of survival. It was a declaration, a way to bridge the gap between their two species, a way to show Neuralin that humans were more than what they appeared to be. As the memory faded, Darien pressed forward through the brutal landscape of Karnal. Each step was a conversation, each moment of survival a message. The fifth day of the Crucible tested the very limits of human endurance. Karnal was not a planet, it was a living weapon. Each sector of the trial was designed to break not just the body but the mind. Darien understood this now more than ever. The planet's ecosystem was a complex sentient network that adapted, predicted, and attacked with calculated precision. His suit's diagnostic systems had long since gone silent. The quantum-reinforced material was more patch than protection now, a testament to the brutal challenges he had survived. Radiation levels fluctuated wildly, creating microscopic tears in his protective layer. His cybernetic eye flickered, calibration systems struggling against the planet's electromagnetic interference. The current sector was a landscape of razor-sharp crystalline formations that shifted and reformed with terrifying regularity. Each crystal was a potential weapon, a potential trap. They reflected and refracted energy in impossible patterns, creating illusions that challenged perception itself. Darian's training kicked in. Lumhari diplomatic archives he had studied came flooding back. Knowledge was survival here. Karnal was more than a physical challenge. It was a psychological gauntlet that probed the deepest recesses of a warrior's mind. He remembered Neuralin's words from their last conversation before he entered the crucible. The planet reads you, she had explained, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to demonstrate the complex neural networks of Karnal's ecosystem. It doesn't just test physical endurance. It strips away everything, leaving only the core of who you are. A sudden shift in the crystalline landscape. The formations began to hum, a low, resonant frequency that vibrated through his bones. Darian recognized the pattern, sympathetic resonance. The crystals were attempting to match his own biological frequency to break down his molecular structure. He pulled a small device from a hidden compartment, a quantum stabilizer, a prototype developed by human xenobiologists. Most would have discarded it as useless, but Darian understood something fundamental about survival. Every tool, no matter how small, could mean the difference between life and death. The device hummed to life, creating a microfield that disrupted the crystal's attempts to synchronize. It was a temporary solution. Nothing on Karnal was ever permanent. Memories flickered through his mind, not just of Neuralin but of the journey that brought him here, countless training missions. The cybernetic augmentations that marked him as different among his fellow soldiers, the relentless preparation that had led to this moment. Survival was a language, and he was becoming fluent. As night fell, if one could call the perpetual electromagnetic storms of Karnal night, Darian established a minimal shelter, not for protection but for observation. The planet was learning, and so was he. In the observation chamber, light years away, Neuralin watched. Her bioluminescent patterns had become a complex tapestry of emotions. Concern, respect, something that went beyond the diplomatic detachment of her species. The crucible was more than a test. It was a conversation between species, between individuals, between what was possible and what was believed to be impossible. Darian Reeves was writing his response, one survival moment at a time. The sixth day of the crucible arrived with a silence more terrifying than any storm. Darian's body had become a map of survival, each wound, each scar a testament to the impossible journey. His left hand trembled slightly, not from weakness, but from the quantum neural disruptors that were slowly integrating with his remaining organic systems. The line between human and machine blurred with each passing hour. In the observation chamber, Neuralin accessed historical archives searching for context. No human had ever survived beyond the fifth day of the crucible. The trial was designed to be a cultural proving ground, a way for species to demonstrate their fundamental nature, their capacity for adaptation and resilience. For the Lamhari, such trials were about collective consciousness. For humans, it was something more individual, something Neuralin was only beginning to understand. Darian's memories surfaced, fragments of a life that had prepared him for this moment. He remembered his childhood on the resource-depleted regions of Earth's western territories, a place where survival was not a choice but a daily necessity. His mothers, both environmental engineers, had taught him that adaptation was the truest form of intelligence. See the system, his mothers would say, not as something to conquer, but as something to communicate with. The current sector of Karnal was a neural landscape, a region where physical matter became indistinguishable from thought. Here, the planet didn't just test physical endurance. It probed consciousness itself. Quantum tendrils of energy wrapped around Darian's neural pathways. The planet was attempting to understand him, to break down the barriers between observer and observed. Most candidates would have been overwhelmed, their consciousness fragmenting under the intense psychological pressure. But Darian had something the planet didn't anticipate. On purpose. Not just the simple motivation of proving a point to Neuralin, but a deeper, more complex drive. A belief that connection was possible across seemingly insurmountable differences. His cybernetic eye projected a holographic memory, a moment from their first meaningful conversation. Neuralin explaining the Lumhari concept of living communication. How every interaction was a dynamic process of mutual transformation. The planet's neural tendrils probed deeper, searching for weakness, finding instead a complexity that defied its predictive algorithms. Darian's response was not physical, it was something more fundamental. Acceptance. He didn't fight the planet's probing consciousness. Instead, he opened himself to it, allowed it to truly see the depth of human potential, the capacity for empathy, the ability to find connection in the most impossible circumstances. For a moment, just a moment, the entire planet went silent. In the observation chamber, Neuralin's bioluminescent patterns exploded into a cascade of colors no human translator could fully capture. Emotions that transcended language, understanding that went beyond words. Something was changing. Not just Darian's survival, but the very understanding of what survival meant. The seventh day dawned. If dawn could be described on a planet where light was more a negotiation than a certainty. Darian stood at the threshold of completion, transformed, not just by the physical trials but by something far more profound. The crucible of endurance had become more than a test. It was a dialogue between species, between consciousness, between what was known and what was possible. In the observation chamber, Neuralin had long since abandoned diplomatic protocol. Her bioluminescent patterns had become a complex symphony of emotions, anticipation, respect, something that defied the clinical categorization of her species' traditional communication. The final sector of Karnal was unlike anything encountered in the previous 6 days. Here, reality itself seemed to breathe. Quantum probability fields shimmered like living membranes, each step a negotiation between potential and actual existence. Darian moved not with the rigid determination of a soldier, but with the fluid understanding of someone who had been fundamentally changed. His cybernetic eye and organic eye worked in perfect synchronization, no longer an augmentation, but a true extension of his being. The planet was watching, waiting. In that moment, Darian understood something revolutionary. The Crucible was never about survival in the traditional sense. It was about communication, about bridging gaps that seemed impossible to cross. His body bore the marks of impossible challenges. Quantum stabilizers integrated with scarred tissue. Neural pathways rewritten by the planet's relentless probing. He was no longer just human, no longer just a soldier. He was a bridge. As he approached the final threshold, the membrane of reality itself seemed to pulse. The observation chamber trembled. Neuralin's bioluminescent patterns reached a complexity that no existing translation matrix could decode. Then silence. When Darian emerged, he was not the same person who had entered 7 days earlier. The crowd of alien observers, representatives from 100 different star systems, fell silent. No human had ever completed the Crucible. Until now, Neuralin descended from the observation chamber. Her movement was no longer the calculated stride of a diplomatic envoy, but something more, a recognition, a response. Well, their eyes met. Words were unnecessary. The connection they had begun months ago on the Centauri Nexus had found its true expression here, on this impossible planet, in this moment of convergence. Darian's hand reached out, not in a gesture of conquest, but of connection. Neuralin's bioluminescent patterns responded, a language of light that spoke volumes beyond any verbal communication. The crucible was complete, but something far more significant had just begun. A epilogue. In the years that followed, Darian Reeves and Neuralin would become more than a curiosity. They would become a symbol, a living testament to the possibility of understanding across the most fundamental of differences. Humanity's place in the galactic community was forever changed. Not through military might, not through technological advancement, but through the simple, profound act of truly seeing one another. The end.